This is the Meeting of Minds podcast with me, Philippa Robinson. In this episode of the Meeting of Minds podcast, I'm in conversation with Dani. In this episode, we talk about nervous breakdown, catastrophic brain injury, depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. And if those subjects are triggering for you or are just not good for you to listen to, then it might be better if you give this episode a miss. I also want to apologise for the sound quality in some parts of this recording. We did have a few technical issues, so apologies for that. Dani is warm, open, honest and courageous, and there is so much value in what she had to say. I can't thank her enough for how open and honest she is, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Now over to Dani. So Dani, hi.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me today and coming on this podcast. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your time. How are you?
Doing good. You know, as well as anyone can in 2020, to be honest.
Yeah, a very weird, been a very weird year, hasn't it? And just for, I mean, this won't be coming out perhaps till February, so we're recording this in the middle of December, and we're all very much in a strange time and wondering what Christmas is going to be like and what are the tears going to be like. But it's great to see you, and actually I'm very thankful for the technology of Zoom so that we can still chat and see each other and do this podcast. So it's great to see you.
Yeah, it's going to be a good experience.
So this series, as you know, is talking about being in your 20s. You're now in your early 30s, aren't you? And so it's great. We've got your whole decade to look back on, and for us to hear about how your 20s were for you. So can you what was your overall, what were your 20s like?
I think, to be honest, it's just coming to me, for want of a better way of saying it, probably a roller coaster. So start of my 20s was like on quite a high, got my first full-time job, met some amazing friends, was going out, having like the best times of my life, whether I can remember them due to the alcohol, that's another thing. But, we were just talking a moment ago and I said about my 23rd birthday being like the most amazing birthday ever. Went out with a group of friends and we were all dressed as superheroes and I just had the best night ever.
Oh, and who were you? What was your superhero?
I was Wonder Woman.
Of course you were.
Of course I was. Yeah.
I bet you made a fabulous Wonder Woman.
I was brilliant. I probably got a bit too much into character, but it's fancy dress. You either go big or you go home. So
I love that. Go big or go home. I love that. What a great attitude. Yes.
Yeah. Then I would say that my late 20s, they also they ended on a high as well. I met my life partner, Mike. We're now engaged. Living together. Looking to do all the big, scary things that, everybody talks about as an adult. But, as I said, it was a roller coaster. So obviously between those highs, there has been, some pretty low moments as well. So up and down, I would say. Definitely up and down.
Yeah. And that is life throws us some curveballs and some downward tracks on the roller coaster sometimes, doesn't it? And yeah, definitely. And it's good to hear of the highs. It's great to hear about I so wish I could see those photographs of you as Wonder Woman. I'd love to see a picture one day.
I will send you some.
Please do. I would love to see that. And you're so tall, and I bet you as Wonder Woman you would just be
quite intimidated.
Yeah. Fabulous. That night out, I bet anybody who met you that night would really remember.
Well, there was me as Wonder Woman, another friend, she was Supergirl, then we had Batgirl and Catwoman. So you can imagine the four of us walking down the street together. It looked awesome.
Yes, I am absolutely sure it did. Oh, brilliant, love it. And yeah, I've never been really big on fancy dress, and I kind of wish I was more, because it's like you say, go big, get in character, or go home.
Yeah.
So, like you say, but like you said, there were some bits that weren't quite so great, and I think you're quite happy. You told me you're happy to talk about about those. Yeah. So if you could, I'd be really grateful.
No, that's absolutely fine. So I think just to start off, I will mention that, you know, even in my teens, I suffered with anxiety to a point, especially when my GCSE started. So I've always had that sort of element there within me as a person anyway. But when I was 23, nearly 24 in 2012, my father suffered a traumatic brain injury, which just completely altered the course of not just my life, my family's life, my mum, my sister. It just, well, I can't even put it into words at the moment, but it just, everything, when they say to you, everything changed in a moment, that's quite literally what happened. You know, the life as we knew it was gone, you know, and suddenly we're on a different track, and nobody knows what's ahead of them anyway, but we certainly didn't know what was ahead of us with this one. And yeah, so when that happened, and you know, I would just like to say now that, you know, he survived, he is better, he's coping with, you know, with assistance and things, and you know, he can sort of be sort of independent, but you know, it's been a big old learning curve in that entire time. And unfortunately, as I said, because I have these tendencies for anxiety and that anyway, it just quite literally tipped me off the edge into severe bouts of depression, because my brain just quite literally didn't know how to handle all this grief and new experience, really.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's my big low.
Yeah, and that is just so tough. I mean, you know, tough doesn't seem to do it justice. But I can't think of a better word.
Yeah.
And I can imagine it was such a defining time, and I can imagine that maybe there is life before what happened and life after.
Yeah, it just became all consuming, really. Yeah. Everything. It was all consuming for us.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Did he have an accident? You know, did he have an accident?
We call it an accident, but really that's not, I'm going to be honest, it's not the right word, because he was attacked. So, you know, and I'm going to put this out there, whether I should in this podcast, but this is also where the, you know, the One Punch Takes Lives campaign came in, not long actually after my father had his injury, because it was quite literally one punch that put him in this position. And I'm not just saying this because it's my father, but you know, it was actually nothing to do with him. What happened, I won't go into detail.
No,
but you know, it was actually nothing to do with him. You know, that, and I suppose that's part of the problem as well, is because if there had been some kids sort of understand how the situation came around, but when it was literally nothing to do with my dad, it's just a decision someone else made at that moment with absolutely no regard for what the consequences would be.
Yeah,
that's the hardest thing as well, because it's just that someone made a split decision and changed a whole family's life, but there's been actually no real repercussion on them. You know,
I'm so sorry.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing about the situation. It's nervous laughter.
I know, I know it is, and I am so sorry that is what happened, and that's what your family have had to go through. And as you say, there's been no repercussions either, and you guys are all just left dealing with the fallout of what you said was that one person's decision to take that action. Then, and I think it's really great that you talk about the movement. What was it? What did you say it was called?
It was One Punch Takes Lives, if I remember.
One Punch Takes Lives. Yeah.
It was definitely One Punch. Yeah, it takes lives because funny enough, the same year, I don't think it was specifically my father's incident that brought that around, because it was actually a really big thing in Swansea then. That year that my father had his incident, we'll call it, because there seemed to be a significant number of incidences that involved One Punch where people were left, with severe injuries, or in another case, actually on the same in the same place my father was another gentleman died because of someone hitting him once.
Yeah.
So it just seemed to be, I don't want to say trend, that's the wrong word, but it just seemed to be a thing at the time that all these incidences seemed to be happening at that time. So this campaign came round, and there was and it was kind of hard actually in a way, because you'd see these posters saying like One Punch Takes Lives, and just like you couldn't help but think, is that about my dad? Is that because they know my dad's one of those statistics?
Yeah.
Is that what's brought this on? Not that anybody else would know that, but yeah, for a while I'd see these posters like on this. It's really daft because it's this car park I used to park in to go shopping in Swansea Centre, and it had one of those banners on the railings there, and every time I'd look at it, I'd just think, is that because of what happened to my dad? It not necessarily him personally, but like I said, because he was probably a statistic at the time. And it's just, it's kind of hard seeing that, but at the same time it was good, because I want, you want people to know that literally one action can have absolutely devastating consequences, and this is what people just don't get.
No, I know.
You don't get it. You don't have to, for want of a better way of saying it, pummel someone to leave lasting damage and trauma.
No.
It can simply be, as I said, just one action.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just his life, it's the life of all those people around him as well. So that one punch has taken your life, your mum's life, your sister's life, as well as your dad's life, as you all knew it. And it had, and it all had to change, didn't it? And
definitely.
And thank you for telling us about that, because I think it's really important that people know not only that you're quite right. We quite easily think, one punch doesn't matter. Of course it does matter, and it can have devastating consequences. But also these posters that of campaigns that are out there, yes, there are statistics behind those, but behind the statistics are the real people who are living with the consequences of what have happened. And you are very much testament to that. So I know you said you're not sure whether it's right to say that here, but I really think it is. So thank you. I'd never heard of that campaign. I will look it up, and if it's still a live campaign, I'll put a link to it in the show notes in case anybody's interested. So that was in 2012, and life just changed instantly.
Instantly. And that's the thing. So obviously I sort of tried to carry on as normal, and still, couldn't do nights out for a while, because obviously where I used to go out, my clubbing days is where it happened. And then I tried to carry on with the whole going out thing, and I just never felt right then afterwards. Like, I'd still go out, I'd still have what I thought was a good time, and I realized then that I was being a bit silly. So I wouldn't say I did not have an alcohol problem, but what I would say is when I was going out, I wasn't respecting my limits. So I was just totally overdoing it. And, you know, and I just woke up one day and I was just, after a night out, I was just like, you know what? No, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to keep disrespecting myself like this. It's not helping, you know, because the depression the day after would just be absolutely all consuming.
Yeah.
So I was like, so I actually did decide then to stop drinking alcohol. I have, you know, since in my later 20s and things, you know, I had a couple of nights out where, you know, I've had a few glasses and things, but I have changed my relationship with alcohol as well. And I think that's the thing as well, because when my father was out, there was alcohol involved that night, because it was the main drinking quarter in Swansea. So
yeah,
it's just all these little things, you know, that you don't realise change things for you then going forward, you know. And I'm not bothered. I'm quite happily, you know, not bothered to drink or anything anymore. And I know sometimes people find that a bit, oh, well, why? And I'm like, it doesn't do anything for me, and I know how I feel the next day, and it's not worth it. And it's just about being kinder to myself. Like, well, okay, I might feel good in that few moments, but then going forward, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
So, you know, no, I've just learned I've got to do these little things to just be kind to myself, because a lot of the time my mind, and especially in my 20s, a lot of the time my mind was not kind to me at all, you know, at all. But yeah, as I said, you know, this severe bout of depression. During that time, I had to go, you know, quite honestly, I did have some counselling then, which I don't think it did sort of help, but not really, because I hadn't realised how much help I need. So now I've got therapy lined up for myself, and I'm willing to do that. I want to do it. I want to not fix myself, but I want to learn how to be the best of me, but also respect the fact that there are these dark parts to me which are always going to be there, and it's just about managing it. And you know, I can't say that I won't ever have those dark moments again. As you know, I did have a nervous breakdown last year. So, you know, I can't say that they won't ever happen again, but it's just a case of just getting, I want this therapy as well to just get these things out of my head, and they're spoken, because they're things you don't necessarily want to say to close family and friends, but you need to say them to someone. And I think, you know, it'll just be a good thing to just get it out there. But yeah, as I said, unfortunately, a lot of that was happening during my 20s.
Oh, and that is such a lot, isn't it? And sorry, I'm just really touched by your honesty and your openness. And you know, I can just sort of imagine you know, 24-year-old Dani out you know, drinking a bit much, because you know, it's kind of what some people, not everybody, you know, does in their 20s, and it's a bit like you're trying to carry on as normal maybe, but there is no normal for you at that time. Your normal has been pretty much shattered, hasn't it? And I should imagine, I can so see that, you know, I think I know quite a lot of people who think that alcohol is a relaxant, but actually it's not. It's a depressant. So with a history of, as you've said, of some anxiety and the grief from your dad. And I know your dad is still with you, but actually the dad that you knew is not here anymore, is he?
No.
You know, and there is a real grieving process to go through in times like that, which I think is even more complicated by the fact the person is still here. So
you're the first person to actually really say that. I normally have to say that to people and say, well, it's been such a mind-bending thing trying to grieve someone that's technically still alive, but like you say, not to sound harsh, you know, but you could argue he's not. You know, some people would say, oh, well, you should be grateful he's here. And it's like, well, I am, but at the same time, he is not, he will tell you himself, he's not the person he was.
Yeah.
You know, he knows, even down to the way he pronounces certain words. They're completely different now. His voice is different.
Yeah.
And all that as a young 20-year-old, you know, when you're supposed to be finding your feet, you're supposed to be getting your full-time job, you're supposed to be, you know, figuring out what career you want, you know, who's your life partner, you know, you're gonna be having babies soon, or you're buying a house, all that. And then, you know, that happened with my dad. And like I said, I was still trying to do the next step, but my life did stop.
Yeah.
I was single when my father had his accident by choice. I had separated with someone a couple of years before, and I was enjoying myself. I was young, I was single, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to be tied down. I wanted a relationship, but I didn't want to be tied down that time. I was perfectly happy. But then when this happened to my father, there were, you know, people that sort of came into my life and I was interested, but I knew I couldn't pursue anything because my head was just not in the right space. And I think as well, it's because I knew I was broken inside and I didn't want it to be someone else's responsibility and I didn't want someone to take on something that was broken. I realize now I just needed to be honest. Like I'm talking to you now, which is I was like, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to say everything, because that's what made me ill for such a long time as well, is the hiding. Can't show, can't tell, can't say, you know? So I was like, and the same happened with the relationship. So I ended up, you know, I was in no relationship for over 6 years, you know, because it was just more a case of trying to survive my own mind, I suppose. For want of a better way of saying it, you know, and trying, not always feeling like I was succeeding, but trying to support my family, my mum and my sister. But unfortunately, I always saw myself as the weaker one because I was the one that would have the breakdowns. I was the one that would have the obvious, severe depression episodes. Whereas my family, they were having the same, but they were better at hiding it or maintaining a front, I suppose. Not in a bad way, you know. They just seem to composure. They seem to be able to maintain their composure, whereas I was the one that was just a mess, and you know, just in bed, and you know, just not able to face the world. And so I always felt like I was the weakest one as well, and like I wasn't doing enough.
Well, you all have different ways of coping by the sound of it. And, you know, as somebody at the age you were there, mid-20s, dealing with that, you know, with the history of anxiety and a bit of depression, I mean, you know, it's no surprise that you took to your bed occasionally, because frankly, if that, you know, that would send most people into a flat spin and a downward spiral anyway, and maybe that is what it was, and you were just all coping in different ways. And you know, I know we've talked a little bit about this in the past, so I do know some of this story, but I don't know all of this. Some of this is new to me, and I'm really impressed by you, got tears in my eyes now. I am really impressed by you, and you're the first person who's managed to.
We'll be in the right mess.
Okay, but you know,
we're going to be in a mess though.
But it's real. It's real life, and it's real emotion, and it's real story. And you know, I really get the. I'm just trying to move us away so we both end up in floods of tears, really. But I really get. I think the reason I get the grieving for somebody who has gone, even though physically they're still here, is because I grew up with an alcoholic mother, and I, in the end, couldn't stay on the roller coaster with her anymore because, you know, she's up, you're up, she's down, you're down, and I distanced myself. And during that time, I did have some counselling, and the counsellor said to me, I've had lots, I can't remember which counsellor this was, I've had quite a lot over the years, but this woman said to me, well, you know, because your mum is either in the middle of getting drunk or hungover, you don't ever actually really know who she is. So it's no wonder you don't have a relationship with her, because you don't ever really know who she is. And that was a real wake up for me, that I did feel that was right. And I also suspected that would always be the case. So I started grieving at that stage, really, the relationship that I never had, to all intents and purposes, was never going to get, and I didn't get. I mean, she's not here anymore, and I never did get that relationship. So I do understand what it is like to grieve that, to grieve for yourself what you have not got anymore. And you know, and it is tough. And like you say, at the time of life where you're spreading your wings, you're getting, you know, you're out in the world of work, and you're meeting people, and you're wondering who's going to be your partner for life, and what's your career going to be like, and you know, where are you going to live, you know, all those, you know, family and all those big questions. And actually your life was sort of put on hold really for quite a long time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and like you say, but I think that's, like you say, well, that's the point of this podcast, your 20s, and that's something I've realised now as I've got into my 30s, well, even late 20s, early 30s, there's so much pressure on you in your 20s. You're expected to be an adult when really you're not. You're only a couple of years out of school. You know, you're expected to make these big life decisions and know what you want to do. Yeah. And I realise now, it was totally okay to not know. Some people pick up careers, you know, in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. So something happens, you know. Well, we'll use.
Oh, I've lost you. We've lost your sound.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we had a bit of a technical issue there, but we're back. And Dani, you were just saying that you know, there's so much. It's tough in your 20s. There's expectations that you have, you know, everything sorted. But you were going on to say that, you know, people change careers, get new careers, find their career in their 20s, 30s, 40s. I think that's where we left off before we lost you.
Yeah, and I'm saying, I'm going to use you as an example. You know, you've now decided to embark on this brilliant journey with safe and supported coaching. You know, so and I believe it is a passion of yours that's probably always been there, but it's taken till now to really go, do you know what? I'm going to grab the bull by the horns and I'm just going to ride it. Mm. Whereas, and that's okay. It's totally fine, because I realised there's just, why are you expected to know exactly what you want to do and be when you're in your 20s? Why can't that change? As something I've learned, you know, with what happened to my father, life changes in an instant. So why can't positive things change? You might work in a career for, I don't know, 15 years for a big reputable bank, and then go, well, actually, I want to set up a craft shop and do craft things and make nice things for people to buy. You know, that's okay. But if you if you're just bumbling through life, just taking on jobs, which quite literally is what I was doing, you know, I won't say that there's many jobs I've applied for is because I was really passionate about them. It was because I needed a job.
Yeah.
You know, I literally bumbled from job to job, and I was just like, oh, you know, you've got to get the biggest pay grade and things. And I've realized now that's actually not what's important. So some people, if you're ambitious, that's brilliant. If you know what you want to do, that's great. But at the same time, you know, just take a step back and say to yourself, what do you actually want? You know, do you want that high flying job that comes with all that stress, or do you just want to be comfortable? And for me, especially after my breakdowns, what I've realized is I want to work. I want to be in an environment where I'm with people. Obviously, everybody wants less stress if they can have it, but I just want to be comfortable in what I'm doing, and it's something that's helping people but not putting too much pressure on myself. So yeah, if I decide I want to move up the ranks in say 20 years time, that's how I feel in 20 years time. But right now for me, it's just to be comfortable. It's not about the pay grade. I'm not saying obviously in life money helps, especially, you know, the way things are, but my health definitely means more to me now than a wage. And a position within a company, because there's no point in me having the pay packet and the position if I'm ill, because I can't be there to do it anyway.
No.
So,
and then you can't be there for anybody else either. I mean, you can't be there for yourself, and also you can't be there for anybody else. And it ties in with what you were saying about being kinder to yourself, doesn't it?
Exactly. And you know, there is that, you know, all that going about now this year and last year, you know, be kind to yourself. There's nothing more true actually than at the moment is, you know, and the thing is, you've got to be kind to you first, because no one is more, the biggest critic in your life is yourself. And I am my worst critic.
Absolutely. Me too.
So, you know, but I think it's just, everybody just needs to take a step back, especially after 2020, and realize, you know, it's okay to not know what's happening. As long as, you know, you're honest with yourself, then, you know, the rest will follow. You know, like I said, I am now on my path I want to be on. You know, obviously, as you know, I was in Bristol. You know, last 2 years, I moved back last year, unfortunately, under the cloud of a nervous breakdown. But, you know, I am on the path I want to go. I am with Mike, who I absolutely love and adore. You know, we're going to get married whenever COVID permits that. It's a good thing we haven't booked for 2020, isn't it? Which is when I originally wanted to do. You know, we're going to buy a house, maybe start a family. And for me, I know that's what we want, but I know that's definitely what I want now. Whereas, you know, if you'd have asked me even 4 years ago, I'd have been, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. You know, but now,
and in a weird way, do you think that the breakdown has helped you? Has there been anything positive to come out of the breakdown that actually maybe that has helped you focus on what it is you really want? Or do you think that was coming anyway?
No, I would say the breakdown definitely gave me perspective, because I won't say that, you know, the things that go through your head, you know, anyone who's been in those dark places, they know, you know what your mind will do to you and say to you. But I just realized, this is the first time I'm going to voice this. I'm going to say, you know, I realized I do want to live, and this is what I want from the life that I'm going to live going forward. You know, so Oh, wow.
Oh,
I've never, there's only other one person I've ever spoken to about being in that dark place, and they completely brushed off everything I said. So it's just like, but like I said, it's just about being honest.
It is.
I think that's one of my big words for this year as well, is honesty, but not just with other people, with yourself.
Oh, and it's got to start with yourself and being,
yeah.
I mean, you know, as we were talking before we came on, I mean, I had a breakdown 4 years ago, and I think now, 4 years later, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, most of the time, for certainly the first 3 years, it didn't seem like it, but it's probably the best thing that happened to me. And I do believe that it happened because I refused to listen to the warning signs beforehand. And I lived behind a mask. I pretended everything was all right all the time. And, you know, I put on a bloody good show. I mean, you know, even people I've been friends with for like, you know, 30, 35, 40 years didn't realize the depth of how bad I felt. And I too have been in those dark places. I totally get it. And I'm really touched that you've felt okay to say that today. And also I am really pleased to hear you say that, you know, you don't feel like that now.
No, no, not at all. But, and, you know, like I said, obviously I think 2020 has given everybody a time for reflection anyway.
It has. I think it's been a stop sort of for everybody, hasn't it? And I know some people have had a really awful time. Some people have had a really, really awful time, and I totally get that. And for those people, I am really sorry. But and there are people who have got something out of it. And it sounds like you. I know I have as well. Too. And sorry, you were talking there. It's just allowed you to take a breath.
Yeah. Well, this is what I'm saying. 2020, not just me personally. I think just everyone, especially with the first lockdown, you know, life stopped as we knew it. And I think everybody realized just how hectic things are, and how in some ways they don't need to be that way. It's just a pattern everything has gotten into. You know. And I
agree with you, and I do think people. I definitely used to wear my busyness as a badge of honor, really. You know, I'm busy, I can cope. Give it to me, I'll do it. Yeah. But actually what my busyness was a mask for it. It stopped me having time to think. It stopped me. It meant I never had time to allow those feelings that were bubbling under to actually come out. And I think everybody has had that reset, and I know some people have found it really awful to stop and not be able to be busy. And I'm not saying everybody felt the way I did, but definitely I did feel like that. And then when it all erupted, you know, there's no going back from that, which I'm actually quite pleased about now. But it has allowed some people to reframe things a bit, hasn't it? And like you and I think have taken something out of this time to reflect. And I think you will be entering 2021 in a different frame of mind by the sounds of it.
Oh, definitely. I won't be going into 2021 like I was going into 2020. Obviously, I'm not saying 2020 was rubbish for everyone, but obviously given what happened to me at the end of last year, even going into 2020, it didn't start off well. You know, it got better, and I have vastly improved. Vastly. You know, I'm not saying I'm fixed and I'm perfect, but I'm definitely at a better place. You know, but it's just a case of I know that. I know where I am, and I'm admitting where I am. And when I do get my bad days, I voice them now rather than hiding them.
Yeah.
I will say to, you know, my mum, or I will say to Mike, today's not a good day.
Yeah.
There's, you know, my head's having a wobble. Rather than being like, no, gotta hide it. Don't show. They don't want to know. They don't want to put up with that kind of thing. And I think this is, you know, what we just said about 2020 is actually about your 20s as well. You know, there is a pattern, isn't there, that's expected from you in your 20s. Get a, you know, finish uni or whatever education, get a career, have a baby, you know, get married, and you are pretty much expected to do that by the time you're 30. And if you don't, like me now, you know, I'm not married, I haven't got children, I'm 32, and you know, I have people saying to me, oh well, you know, you need to sort that out, don't you? And I'm like, well, you know, you don't know my life circumstance. Obviously, my mid-20s was not for finding partners and having babies, you know.
But even without what happened to you,
20s.
Yeah. But even without what happened to you, you know, which was terrible, those expectations, I mean, it's hard enough having expectations of ourselves, but most of those expectations that we put on ourselves come from an external source. They come from our family, maybe not our family, but they come from, you know, random, you know, people who you know a little bit, who go, oh, you know, you're getting on a bit now, aren't you? When are you going to get married? And when are we going to see babies and things? And actually, you know, I know they're just throwaway comments, but they do sort of seep into you know, your psyche a little bit. And I know, well, I didn't meet my husband till I was 33. I didn't have children until I was 37 and 39, and you know, that was, you know, considered quite old to be starting. But I wasn't ready before then. I hadn't met the right person. I wasn't ready. And I'd been diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome when I was 25 and told to don't leave it too late to have kids. So that, oh my God, you know, God, you know, the pressure was on, and I did leave it late. I didn't leave it late on purpose. That's just the way it happened. And I was very lucky, and I was very lucky, and I fell pregnant really quite easily both times. So I was really, really lucky. I know I was. But those expectations that come from outside on top of what we might want for ourselves can be like a real weight sometimes. And actually, you know, to be able to concentrate on what we want for us, what we want our lives to be like, what the words that we say to ourselves, that voice in our head, to try not to listen to the harsh words that come very easily sometimes, and be kinder to ourselves, like you said. All that takes work, and definitely. I think by keeping busy we don't do that work, and actually I think
you allow yourself to ignore it. When you're busy, I'm too busy to deal with it.
Absolutely. And you know, everything that you have said has just been absolutely perfect for this podcast on a series about the 20s, and I can't thank you enough for your bravery and your honesty, and I'm you know, I'm really glad to see you're smiling back at me now. And I know you were nervous about today, and you've been absolutely fabulous. Before you go, just one thing. I have asked all my guests so far whether they have a little saying or a motto or something that they find useful to say to themselves, or they say to other people. And I know you've got a good one.
Yeah, so mine is just a word, because I you know, long mottos don't tend to work for me, but mine is just breathe. It's just for me to, in that manic moment, to just take a step back in my own head and just go, right, where am I? What's happening? right, let's move forward. Because as daft as it sounds, we do forget to sometimes breathe. We're so busy and wrapped up in our own minds, you forget to just breathe. And it, as you say, it just brings you back and just grounds you for that moment. And, and then you can just carry on and move on.
Yeah. And do you find that being able to just remind yourself to breathe and take a deep breath, and just because it does help you center and ground and bring yourself back to the now, because often what is happening is we're racing forward in our head and panicking about something that hasn't even happened and may not happen. But do you find that really helps you?
I do, yeah, because I think it reminds me as well that I'm not just a mind, I am a body. So because when it's true, because your mind it controls everything, and it can, it can take over. And so if you just say that word and say breathe, you remember that you are, there's not just this mind, there's a body and there's a being as well.
There is.
It's just like it doesn't work every time, but it's just like a little reset, just a little moment to reset and go, right, okay, let's try this again.
Yeah. You're right, because there is a saying, we are not our thoughts, and I think it's very easy sometimes to live in our heads and believe that we are our thoughts, but we're not. We're a living, breathing being, and actually our soul, the very essence of who we are, is not what is in our head. And it's very easy to forget that. And I find, I don't know whether this is how I find, when I'm starting to panic a little bit, I did go through a phase of having panic attacks, I'll put one hand on my heart, one hand on my stomach, and I will just say to myself, it's okay, I'm safe. And that really helps ground and center me. So I do a very similar thing to you. So I think that's fabulous. Breathe. We must all remember to do that. Absolutely. Dani, thank you so much.
Thank you, Philippa. It's been amazing.
You have just been fabulous. Brilliant. Thank you. You take care.
And you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you for listening to the Meeting of Minds podcast. You can find this podcast in all the usual places. Please tell your friends. Please subscribe. And if you have a moment, I'd be really grateful if you could rate and review, as it helps other people find us and helps me spread the messages of empowerment and positivity that I'm really passionate about. If you want to find out more about me, you can visit my website at www.safeandsupported.co.uk. Until next time, bye.